For years, every evening after work, I would spend it on my couch. And every following morning, I would wonder exactly why my life wasn't what I wanted it to be, why I hadn't been able to build that business I always wanted to build, why I felt lonely all the time, and why I never felt that I was making progress on any of the hobbies that I actually liked. And then in the past few months since being laid off, I fully reevaluated my life and decided that I wanted to make my evenings productive, fulfilling, and intentional going forward. And now, after some trial and error, I can happily say that I have used the past couple months of my evening time more productively and more intentionally than I've ever used in my entire adult life. But when I first started, I was wildly inconsistent, relying on willpower instead of systems. On good nights, I was fully focused, locked in, and did everything that I said I would do to myself in my head. But on bad nights, I was completely checked out and made absolutely no progress. And when I finally went to bed, wondering exactly why I wasted my evenings yet again. But by the end of this video, you will have 5 strategies for how to turn your evening time from something that is potentially unproductive or not fulfilling to a repeatable system where you feel that you are actually excited for your evenings because you're working towards the goals you've always had for yourself. So the first strategy I implemented to make my evenings more productive was to get out of the house and exercise. Whenever I would come home from work, I would be mentally exhausted, and the couch felt like the only option. This wasn't just a bad week of doing this was years. I kept asking myself, why can't I just snap out of it? Why can't I just will myself to use this time in the way that I always wanted to use it? Yet I realized that willpower was never the issue. After a long day at work, my brain just wanted to go into shutdown mode the minute I got home. But I discovered, after changing up my routine to instead incorporate exercise the minute that I got home, everything would change. By going and doing 60 minutes of cardio running on the treadmill, at the end of it, while I might have been physically tired, at least for a moment, I was mentally very clear. Now, I don't know why this particularly was happening. It could be the endorphins that were going through my head. It could be the actual aspect of running or walking or jogging helped to get my mind off of whatever happened at work of the day. I don't know. All I know is it worked. The exercise isn't the actual goal in this case. The idea was to do some sort of physical activity to interrupt all of that mental fatigue from work that you felt that day and to help provide a reset before you actually could go into your evening time rather than letting that mental fatigue bleed over into your evening. So try it out. It can be something small. It can be walking around the block. It could be doing a light workout. It can be anything that is physical as long as it helps to get your body into a little bit of a sweat. So that way it can provide a buffer between your workday and your evening time. The second strategy that I used to make my evenings more productive was to implement app restrictions on my smartphone. So for the past few years, whenever I'd walk in the door and plop myself down on the couch, my first thing that I would automatically do is open up Reddit, open up Instagram, and start scrolling through what was going on in other people's lives throughout the day. But it was never really a conscious decision to do this. It was just on autopilot. And once I started, I couldn't really stop myself. Hours would go by, and by the end of it, I would just feel mentally drained, tired, and that I wasted another evening yet again. So I realized that willpower was already spent by the end of the day after working a stressful job. I could no longer rely on my willpower to make the right decisions. So what did I do? I made those decisions harder to do. I went into the screen time settings on my iPhone and implemented app restrictions for both the time of day I could look at certain apps as well as the duration of that time. Instead of totally canceling out using Instagram, TikTok, or Reddit, I instead only allowed those apps to be used later in the evening, right before bedtime, because I knew that this was better than using these apps at the start of my evening, where I could just potentially end up wasting the entire evening on these apps. So try it for yourself. Go and use your screen time settings or another type of settings on a different phone to limit how much you can access these apps and limit it to later in the day. The third strategy that I implemented to stop wasting my evenings was to no longer binge watch TV, or in my case, anime. So if I wasn't scrolling on my couch in the evening, I was binge watching anime. There were infinitely many series to watch. I was always behind on a few episodes, and my friends are constantly saying, oh my God, you need to watch this episode and this season. It is amazing. But one episode didn't just stay one episode. It could mean multiple episodes in that series, episodes across many different series. The list was endless. But I realized that the anime watching wasn't exactly the issue. It was the entire infrastructure set up around it. What do I mean? Firstly, autoplay. With a lot of these particular TV series and anime series, autoplay is just a feature of the platform, and I made sure to turn it off so that way I would not feel tempted to automatically start watching a second episode and then think to myself, oh, I should just finish this episode before I stop for the night. I also implemented a mental 1 episode, then check rule, so that way I'm constantly asking myself, do I want to keep watching this? And if the answer was no, I would stop myself rather than just letting my brain go on autopilot. I also made watching anime less convenient by no longer allowing myself to watch it on my phone. I even went and deleted the Crunchyroll app on my phone. So that way I would actually have to go down and sit at a desk or sit in front of my TV to watch it. Similar to the app restrictions I mentioned previously, I also only allowed myself to watch these episodes as a reward for using my evening time intentionally by moving this to the end of my day rather than watching it the minute I got home. So by making all these small little tweaks, I helped to prevent myself from binge watching anime or other TV series when I got home and wasting all my evenings, and instead shifted to be something more intentional and something I still got to enjoy, but just made it so it wasn't the highlight of my evening. The fourth strategy I implemented to improve how I use my evenings was honestly to time block my calendar for my evenings. Now, I know this sounds extreme. Using time blocking for your evening time on your personal calendar like you do at work, but hear me out. The reason that time blocking can work at your job is very similar to the reason why it can work at home. If something isn't scheduled, it can be very unlikely to happen. Before this, my evenings had no real structure. I'll kind of just think to myself, what do I want to do this evening? That could happen earlier in the day or right before I go home. But there was never any really intentional choice behind it. And I never had anything that was planned. It was always just, how am I feeling right now? And every time that I had these vague intentions without anything concrete that I had planned, it was just so much easier to end up on the couch. So I literally started to time block my personal calendar with the things that I wanted to do during my evening. It would be an hour to go work out, it'd be an hour to try a new recipe, and then it'd be an hour to go and try a new hobby. Let's say, for example, filming this YouTube video. By having this calendar with things already scheduled in it, it removed the decision fatigue of me having to decide right before my evening started what to focus on, and instead say, I just follow what is on the calendar that I've already planned. And if it says go to the gym, I went to the gym. If it said you're going to learn a new recipe, I learned a new recipe. It removed the decision fatigue and the willpower needed to decide what I needed to do when I wasn't always sure. So these time blocks weren't rigid down to the specific minute, but the idea was to have at least a plan for my time in my calendar. So that way there was less of a chance that I would use my evenings in an unproductive and non-intentional way. The real shift that I had was realizing that my evenings were not just leftover time after work. It was time that could be actively managed, similar to how I managed my work time, in a way that helped me move closer to my goals. And I understand that it's daunting to go from potentially never having budgeted any of your time after work to scheduling things in a calendar, but just try it. If you actually implement it, at the end of the week, you can look back and say, wow, I spent 10 hours working on this puzzle that I never thought I was going to complete. Or maybe it was 2 hours to go and learn a new recipe so you can impress your friends. By being able to put this in a calendar, you also have the ability to look back concretely and feel proud of yourself and how you use your time. And that will help you to motivate yourself. So that way you never have a down day again. Or if you do, you minimize the number of evenings that you have that are these kind of veg out evenings that I had for years. And the fifth and final strategy that I implemented to stop wasting my evenings was to feel comfortable with making small steps in the right direction. Now, when I first had this resolve to go and never waste my evenings again, I tried to be perfect from the get-go. Day one, I went and put everything in the calendar. I was going to spend X time doing this, X time doing this, X time doing this, and everything was fine. I had the willpower the minute I made that resolve. But then on day 2 and day 3, again, long day at work, I ended up on the couch again, wasting my evening. And I realized that my goal of being perfect from the get-go was sabotaging myself. And this cycle just kept repeating itself. Be perfect one day, lapse the next day, try again the third day, lapse the fourth day. So what I realized was that this standard I had in my head for perfection was the problem, not really the willpower, not really the discipline. It was the target. I needed to lower the bar deliberately so that way I could train myself over time to have the discipline to be able to spend my evenings intentionally, rather than just expecting that if my brain said, we're going to start spending this time perfectly, that was just going to change immediately in my life. So what I first did was, for the first 2 weeks, I just set aside an hour of my evening in my calendar for a deliberate activity that I chose. After those 2 weeks, and after I became good at actually following that hourly planned activity, then I upped it to 2 hours for another 2 weeks and slowly kind of increased it until my entire evening, with the exception of maybe a 30-minute block at the end, which was just left up just for whatever I wanted to do, I actually had followed through. The end result was that an increasing amount of my evenings were productive and fulfilling, which was caused by me raising this bar slowly over time so that my mind and my body became acclimated to this way of structuring my evenings. I'm not saying that I'm always perfect now. Like, there are definitely days where I do really feel like I want to spend some or all of my evening doing things that I would call not productive or not fulfilling. But the idea is that by slowly acclimating myself to make small changes in how I use my evenings and to go forward with that, I can over time increase the amount of time that I'm spending intentionally and feel like I'm not depriving myself or that my body or mind isn't ready to do that. So try it for yourself. You could start 20 minutes, an hour, just make it on a daily routine and slowly up it over time. And I think you'll be surprised at just how much you're eventually able to spend your evenings on doing things that are meaningful, productive, and fulfilling for you. So these 5 strategies that I listed are ultimately to help you reclaim more of your evenings for things you actually want to do. The difference is bad nights are now the exception, not the norm, and that I am more intentional with how I use the time in the evenings to achieve my own goals and to make me feel like my life is worth living and I'm happy with the choices that I made. But if you're stuck in the same cycle that I was for years, don't try to do everything all at once. Just take 1 or 2 of these particular strategies I've mentioned, implement them on a small scale, and gradually over time, you can expand to all these strategies or others. You want to acclimate yourself over time and to train your mind and your body to look at this evening time less as leftover time and as the most exciting part of your day that you don't want to waste anymore. But let me know below. Is there something that you're doing during your evenings that you feel is wasting that time? Is there something that you'd rather be doing instead, but haven't been able to actually implement in your life? I'd hope there'd be a conversation below so that way I can learn more about other techniques that I can use to improve how I use my time in my evenings now, because let's face it, I'm not perfect and I'm always looking to improve. But anyhow, I appreciate that you watched this video and I'll see you next time. Thanks.